subscribe, please hit like, and what we're going to do here is reassemble a very old pocket watch. It's called a Rode pocket watch. So here I'm oiling the area, the hole where the mainspring barrel goes in. I previously did a video on putting the mainspring on. I'm putting the escapement wheel in place here. This is a little bit tricky to get this escapement wheel into that pivot. For some reason I farted around with that for quite a while, as you can see, and I just left this video kind of raw. I did the 4 times speed on this video, so it's a 1 hour video, but I didn't think it would be worthy of 1 hour of your time, so I want to only waste 15 minutes of your time today. So here is the intermediate wheel, then the center wheel is going to come in next. The intermediate wheel is the one where the pivot is down. The pivot's longer, or the shaft is longer going down on the intermediate wheel, a little trickier to come on or get on. And I made sure that I oiled where the setting mechanism was, and where there were parts in that setting mechanism where friction could occur, so it would be nice and smooth for setting the watch. So I put a thicker oil in there and made sure I oiled everywhere where the clutch mechanism was, and make sure that the thing worked here. I'm just kind of testing it and turning it. I haven't put the canyon pinion on yet, but that'll come on a little later. But I am going to put on the main plate soon, so I also oiled the pipe that is between the two plates, just to make sure that it has very little friction. It's just a game of reducing friction. This is a very difficult plate to put on. I played with this for a long time. It didn't just drop in like most plates do. For some reason it just didn't want to fit in there for some reason. Don't know why, but it seemed like there were shafts, or there were little knobs on the bottom of that plate that were aligning with holes. And they just weren't aligning properly. It didn't matter what I did. So I played with that for quite a while until I finally took it off the Myers number 58 movement holder and decided to just get it done manually. I never like when that happens, because you're at risk of pushing down and perhaps bending the pivot. So the pivot on the center wheel is pretty tough, but the intermediate wheel pivot's not so tough. So I kept taking it up and then putting it back down, and taking it up and putting it back down again. You just take your screwdriver there and you work it in. So here I've switched scenes, I think, and yeah, I've got the plate on now, all good. And I decided I would oil things up before I put on the ratchet wheel, and might as well oil the center wheel, upper center wheel jewel, and the intermediate wheel jewel as well. So I'm putting a thicker oil on that. And then I've got to, here it was weird, there was a half of I think it was like a washer that split. Now there was a screw on the other half, if you can look at that. There's a screw that goes on, but the overall wheel here holds those two pieces in place. So I decided to reuse that, as it would be very difficult to find that part anywhere. So here there's a groove on the inside that aligns with the screw, so you kind of play with it until the whole thing falls down. Now the mistake I made here was that this screw it screwed in nicely, but it was the wrong screw. So because this screw and the ratchet wheel screw looked exactly the same, the problem I had when I put the ratchet wheel screw in, here I'm screwing down the plates because they're nice and flush. And I always check the edges where the plate touches the main plate to make sure it's completely down, so I have no issue with crushing any parts in this action. So here I was putting in the ratchet wheel, and the spaced part in the ratchet wheel goes up, and I measured the screw to make sure the screw would actually go in place, in the right place. And I oiled the click spring here to make sure that the click was also lubricated. And so I aligned that up and took the ratchet wheel, or the ratchet wheel screw, and put that in. After kind of farting with this a bit to get this aligned, I finally got it in and aligned, and you're just looking for the square block from the arbor to stick out, so you can so you know that it's flush and it's working well. So I put that in, but I saw a gap in there, and I said, okay, I'll just leave it like that for now. I may have these two screws in the exact wrong place. I had to flip these up, and turns out later on I just took that one off and put it with the other one, and it turned out that it worked, no problem. Here I'm putting this smaller plate on, but I'm putting the screws on, but not tightening them, because I had to play with the impulse. I had to play with the escapement wheel to make sure it was in the upper pivot. That was the problem I had. So I was farting around with that a lot. I even had to put on a pair of times 20 glasses to really look in there to make sure that that pivot was in the jewel hole. I did not want to play with breaking anything. So you just have to be super cautious when you do this work to make sure nothing gets broken. I'm just again seeing whether I've got this thing down, and I did. So I screwed that thing down now nice and tight, and I just kept retesting it by just putting a little tiny bit of pressure on the center wheel to make sure it was still moving. Here's where I said, okay, let's switch these screws around. Something's wrong. And I just basically took one screw out, and then I replaced it with the other screw. And you'll see me do this. So I took that out, had a look, make sure there was nothing crazy going on there. And I just slide it in sideways. I've got my finger in there, non-gloved. I apologize for that, but not a big deal. And I said, okay, let's just switch these things. In this case here, it's going in. It's like, no, that's too tight. Something's wrong here. So I said, okay, let's take the other one out, which seemed to fit perfectly, and put that in that hole and screw that down, and it fit absolutely perfect. And most watches, a lot of pocket watches, the ratchet wheel is righty-tighty and the other wheel is lefty-tighty, so it's easier to figure out. So in this case, everything worked fine. I put them both back in, and I'm checking the winding mechanism, and with my thumb I'm just holding the center wheel and getting a little power on the mainspring, and then letting go, and I'm looking at the train, the wheel train move. I put a little bit of oil on the upper holes of the wheel train, just to make sure that I've got that it runs perfectly. Another little test there. Everything's fine, and now I think I'm going to oil all the other sides. I'd already oiled the jewels for the balance, upper balance, lower balance, all that. I didn't bother videotaping all that because that's just very meticulous work that it's kind of boring to watch if you're videotaping it. Here I'm just pushing the cannon pinion down with my tweezers. If it's a bigger watch, I'll typically use a stake from the staking set to push the cannon pinion down. But in this case, it was small. So here I'm putting in the pallet fork, making sure it's in the right way. The dart on this one goes down, the safety dart goes down, and so there's a space on the upper side. And then here the bridge, it's called the cock actually for this because it's only one screw and not a bridge. It'd be a bridge if there was two screw and it bridges across, but it doesn't, so it's a cock. So you put that in there and just make sure that pivot is going through that. And I've got my little stick I use for holding things in place, and I'm testing it to make sure it's actually staying. The upper lower pivots are in the jewel holes that are holding that part in place. And once I've got that in place, I hold that part down while I screw it in, test it, screw it in, test it, and always test it a bit, then screw the screw tighter, test it, screw the screw tighter, so you know that the pivot didn't just jump out between you screwing the screw and it's on the side of the jewel, which would break something. So now I'm putting some power on the watch with the mainspring, and I'm just flicking the pallet fork back and forth, understanding that it's got a pretty good flick to it, but I'm going to use my Mobius 9415. It's kind of a gel, and I'm putting that gel right on the jewels of the pallet fork so that they'll have a nice little lubrication when they hit the feet on the escape wheel. So that's a little trick I picked up. I'm sure who I learned that from, but that Mobius gel works exceptionally well to pass that. It actually just reduces friction. Now that I've got that running fairly well, I've got the balance here. I've already disassembled the whole thing and done my job on the balance, threw it into the lighter fluid. The hairspring was in mint condition, no problem. So now I'm feeding it into the watch here, and I always keep my fingers on the edge just in case that balance cock decides to do the Mexican jumping bean thing and just jump right out. I was trying to make sure I found home here and get this thing running perfectly. One thing again with this watch, the tolerances aren't that great, I don't think, but I moved it with my thumb and I got it going again. I was trying to push down on the balance cock to get it to lower on its own. It didn't want to lower on its own, so I thought, okay, what I'll do is I'll use a screw to evenly lower the balance cock down, so I don't put any undue pressure on the actual movement. So it stopped it, and then I just pushed it on the edge and realized it was at a little bit of an angle, and then got it all the way down perfectly. And the amplitude I measured for this watch, by the way, was 310. So that is excellent. I got a 310 amplitude from my time grapher from this watch. The beat error was a little off, but the amplitude was exceptional, so this should be really good. This is another small watch because people out there tend to want to send me small watches now. I'm not sure why. Maybe no one else wants to touch them, but I keep getting these ladies' pocket watches lately, and as I get older, I'm getting smaller and smaller watches. So here I'm putting in the minute wheel, and then I'll put the hour wheel in and just turn the setting mechanism to make sure it's meshing properly. Then I realized, oh, I think I need some dial washers. I picked the exact right case first try. That's not normal for me, by the way. So I got the dial washer in there that'll push, the face will push down on the hour wheel to keep it in place. But I realized too that I needed to actually put the face on, but I do need to loosen the screws to get that thing on. So normally I would loosen the screws and then put the face on, but I decided I'd do it while I'm just holding the face. No harm done, and push that down, and it looked like it was fine. It seemed like it was floating up a bit, but it actually wasn't. It kind of confused me just a bit. I'm keeping my thumb away from the hairspring that's working right now, or the balance cock. As I'm doing this, it's running, and I don't want to in any way jeopardize its operation. So here I clean the face up once again, do a good job cleaning it. Later on, I dirty it when I use my hand to put it in, but I did clean it up the first time, so I was a good boy. And I'm going to case this watch right now, so I case it before I put the hands on. It gives me a little bit more control over it, and I'm going to use a hand setter, the professional hand setter, to put the hands on. The case was generally pretty clean, but I did wipe it down with Rodico to get rid of any oils or anything that was wrong, but it was a pretty clean case. These half screws are a bit of a pain in the butt. I screwed one of them in nicely, then I screwed the second one in and it fell through. So I don't like half screws. They're supposed to be someone's invention to make casing a watch a lot easier, but they're really a pain in the butt. So if anyone else there has a comment on these half screws, I'll take it. So I ended up putting one in, taking one out, taking the other one out, shifting the movement over, putting the other one in, then putting the other one in, and then taking it out, and then putting it in again, and finally I got the damn thing right. So it was half screw mania. So I really don't like it. It's just a pain in the butt, like I'm saying. Keeping this clean using the B word instead of the A word. So I got that done. I thought, okay, that's nice, and look at the face is all dirty again. So I cleaned the face up really nice. And I also cleaned up the outer rim there, the bezel. It wasn't really dirty either, but I got the bezel clean and I got the crystal nice and clean as well. And then I was ready to actually put the hands on. So I put the hands down, and these hands were kind of weird because one hand did go inside of the other hand. It's kind of a weird way that it works. So they were stuck together, but I thought they were stuck together with oil, but they weren't. So I generally clean the hands up a bit with Rodico again. And I did the seconds hand as well. Then I got my Binford 2000 hand setting device out. I really like this. Somebody asked me online whether they should buy the Bergeron $1,200 hand setter. This one is really nice, and when you flip it from the various hands, I had to clean off the face again, by the way, because when I was working on it before, somehow it got dirty. Anyway, so the hand setter is very nice. I use the rubber tips on it, and you have metal tips if you want to use those too. And it clicks into position. It has a ball bearing kind of click into position. So I can just align it like that, pick the right size that I need for pushing the hand down. And then when I actually do this and push it down, it pushes it down quite easy, and you know it's going down level. So then I move the hand up to 12 o'clock, before I put the minute hand on. Sometimes I'll put the second hand on first to see if the hour hand is going to ride over the second nicely, but the hour hand was up high enough for me not to worry about that at all. So I had no problem with the real estate there. So here I was aligning the minute hand to the top, which I had to do off camera a bit, and then I found the right pusher to push this on. This was a bit tricky because the hour hand was up just a bit. It had a bend on it, so I had to take a screwdriver and just kind of push it down just a bit. Playing with hands is always fun, by the way. And here I've got it all in place and everything's working well. The watch is working exceptionally. And like I said, I'm getting a 310 amplitude on this watch. So please subscribe, please hit like if you like my videos, and thanks for watching this, and stay safe.